Hello everyone and welcome to T3 Wargaming. My name is Scott and today I'm going to talk to you about a two-day tournament that I attended called the Toowoomba Open 2021. This was my first tournament for Age of Sigmar 3rd edition and I'm going to let you know how I went, all the different games I played and all the fun happenings that happened over the weekend. So tournament setup and scenarios. The games, we played 5 games over the 2 days, starting with Tectonic Interference, followed by Device, and then Marking Territory. And then on the second day, we played Feral Foray and Savage Games. So before the tournament, we were given a breakdown of the list that were going and also a pie chart of all the different factions. As you can see, order was taken a lot because order's always taken a lot, especially in the current meta. There's a lot of strong lists in there, especially coming from Lumineth Realm Lords, Daughters of Cain, Ideneth Deepkin, essentially the Elven factions as always. Also, when we arrived on the Friday, on the night, the FAQ dropped for to update all the factions, and so it was decided on the night that the FAQs wouldn't be used over the weekend as there just wasn't enough time for everyone to look through and get used to the new rulings. Our group turned up on the Friday and were around to potentially help set up the tables. It turned out that when we got there that they didn't need our help. But as you can see from these images, there was some beautiful terrain used on the day, a lot of it coming from the printable scenery collection, and most of the tables just looked amazing. We did have a mix of 6x4 boards as well as the correct size 60x44 boards, which got a little bit confusing on the day. So the one thing I would say is that next time, hopefully we could get some 2-inch tape and just mark off all the tables so they're all the correct size, and I think that would help a lot of people get used to the new size of table that they should be playing on. So for my list, I decided to take Aussie Arc Bone Reapers. I've been repping OBR for a while now, ever since 2nd edition. I didn't originally like OBR, but I basically came over to them once I started to see the models close up. Games Workshop have a tendency of not taking the best photos of their models when they're released, and then when you actually see them in real life, they look a lot better. So I opted for Mortis Praetorians, and the reason I picked up Mortis Praetorians is I tend to take Catacross a lot, and I like Catacross. And in Mortis Praetorians, he can offer them not only +1 attack, but also +1 save to the whole army within 36 inches, which is amazing, considering that almost every other army, they can only opt to give something +1 attack or +1 save with a command point, and Catacross does it for 1 Relentless Discipline point to the entire army. I obviously went with Hold the Line, as you can probably see from my list that I have a lot of Mortek Guard in there, and Mortek Guard are probably the toughest infantry unit to kill in the game, especially when they're in Mortis Praetorians, and of course because I had Archon as well, who at this time could hand out multiple Mystic Shields. So Catacross was my general for this because he's 20 wounds, and when your opponent goes to pick their battle tactics, if they're going to try and kill the general, he's very difficult to chew through unless you've got something that can hit him hard or hit him with a lot of mortal wounds. Archon I took because A, he's a hero monster, which are phenomenal in the game at the moment. B, he's got access to all the spell lore, and so can use things like Protection of Nagash combined with Damned Terrain to teleport himself if it needs to be, or he can just, he's so quick anyway with a 16-inch move. You spend that 1 Relentless Discipline point, he's all of a sudden 19-inch move, and that's not even without running. I took a Liege Cavalost because I like to get as many Relentless Discipline points together as I can. Also, giving him the Artificer's Blade makes him -3 rend. So if you do come up against anything that's a particularly tough nut to crack, he can generally do some work. He's not amazing for killing the big things, but he's good for just chipping away damage. And he's also exceptionally fast as well and can flank your opponent's army and offer a bit of threat there. Now for battle line, yeah, I went for 2 units of 20 Mortek Guard and 1 unit of 10. All of these were in Hunters of the Heartland so that they couldn't be stomped, and more importantly, they couldn't be roared. Now the problem there is if they did get roared, that would stop them from getting their rerolls to save using the Shield Wall command ability. And that would just ruin their day. Because a massive part of the Mortek Guard's strength is being able to just not go anywhere. And when they've got Archon and Catacross around as well, you can potentially bring 6 back to each unit. I also took a Mortek Crawler because I love Mortek Crawlers. I know they're not as good anymore, but a great thing I love about Mortek Crawler is that they offer a threat to your opponent, which can often lead to bad decisions being made, but it can also lead them to coming to me. And with me being Mortis Praetorians, it allows me to reroll hits if they charge my units. I have to use a Relentless Discipline point to do that, but if you've got Mortek Guard that are rerolling hits and rerolling saves, they can do a lot of work. I also took the Nightmare Predator because in the past I've found that this list doesn't hand out mortal wounds very well. So it's a good idea to take something that can just chip out a few mortal wounds and just get through those really tough armor saves, which will come up later on. So round 1, I came up against Nathan Goodchild, who is a fellow Simple Math crew member, and we've never faced each other before the tournament, and so we decided to grudge, and mainly partly due to that is because 1 week before the tournament, Nathan was like, oh, I really wish I could play my Nighthaunt with all my hex rays, but none of them are painted. So being a nice guy that I am, I offered to paint his army for him. So he sent them my way, and me and my partner Nicole spent 3 days painting the entire army and getting it to a standard where he could take it to the tournament. That included 40 Hex Wraiths, 1 Black Coach, Lady Alinda. Nicole already had a Black Coach that Nathan could then borrow, and also a Knight of Shrouds. So going into this round, which was Tectonic Interference, which essentially is the old shifting objectives where there's 3 objectives and every battle round 1 objective is worth more than the others. Nathan kindly offered to pay for all my drinks on the day because I had painted his army, and so we knew this was going to get out of hand and very fun very quickly. So Nathan had less drops than I did, so he chose for me to go first. He immediately asked me afterwards if this was the right choice, and I said probably not because it allowed me to get all my buffs off. However, it did offer him the opportunity to get the double turn in the future. Now, the game progressed quite quickly with him pushing up into me. I initially grabbed all 3 objectives to score maximum points and tried to hold him back as much as I could, but the problem with his army is it just hands out so many mortal wounds, and OBR really struggle against that, and so he just was able to grind me down over the turns and grab the objectives back and started scoring more points, but it was still really close. The main objective in the scenario didn't stay in one place, which it can go either way in the scenarios. Like sometimes you play a game and it never moves, but in this one it was jumping all over the place, and due to his higher maneuverability over me. He was able to just keep grabbing it whilst I was struggling to move with my 4-inch Mortek guard. The catapult didn't really do much this game. I believe it knocked 5 wounds off of the Knight of Shrouds, which Archon was then able to finish off with an Arcane Bolt. But in terms of Archon was amazing this game. Archon has been phenomenal ever since Age of Sigmar 3 dropped, in my opinion. I've seen him do some incredible things, especially when you give him the extra attacks from either Catacross or the Liege Cavalos. He's just able to just go in and do the work. He managed to kill a Black Coach, hold up 15 Hex Raves, and was just chipping damage off of other units the entire game. He lasted until about round 4 when he was finally pulled down. But I think the turning point in this game was around turn 3 when Nathan got a super good roll and managed to just clear Catacross off the board, which automatically put my entire army at their normal to hit and saves, which, like, you'd expect OBR to just be alright on their normal saves, but you really notice the difference once Catacross has gone. In the end, it came to like a 1-point difference, and then Nathan getting his grand strategy and managing to kill the last 4 Mortek Guard and score and prevent me from getting mine. So I lost that game. I was also quite inebriated at this point, but it was still a fantastic game. Can't wait to face Nathan again. I've already demanded a rematch, so we're gonna hook up and play a game soon. So in round 2, I came up against Jared and his Cities of Sigmar. I'm pretty sure he was playing Greywater Fastness. So there was a lot of shooting coming my way with the Celestial Hurricanum, 4 steam tanks, 2 units of handgunners. He had gone for a dwarf theme, so most of his army had replaced all the human elements for dwarves. He had a Rune Lord in there. He had a unit of 3 Vanguard Paladors, which he was using for teleporting around the board using the Winds Etheric, and he had 4 Gyrocopters as well. So Jared was a really fun guy to play against, and I really loved his army. I really liked the look of the steam tanks just rolling across the board, firing terribly characterized cannons. They really just didn't do a lot this game, unfortunately. So Jared had previously played Corey, and for those of you who know Corey from the Australian meta, you know that he goes to tournaments and he goes to win, and so he had absolutely crushed Jared in round 1. Jared had also never faced OBR before, so I decided to take the time to just introduce him to the army, what it could do, and the potential threats that he might face, because I don't like gotcha moments in games, and I like my opponents to be aware of what my army can do so that they can either prep for it or counter it, and I just put us more on an even footing. So I gave away turn 1, and Jared surprisingly moved forward with everything, and this freed up his objectives at the back of the board because it was the vice, and so the objectives start in the corners, and he just left them unguarded. So I capitalized on this by using Archon to take some wounds from damned terrain whilst he had protection of Nagash. This allowed him to teleport across the board and just land on one of the objectives and claim it as my own. That therefore scored me the extra point for holding more. However, I then failed to get the turn 2 priority, and Jared decided that he would turn everything around and just blew Archon off the board, and he was just gone. And that was a massive loss to me because that was 360 points of all my magic potential, most of my mortal wound potential, all gone from one character, and I think that is an issue I faced a lot with this list, is that as soon as Arkham was gone, most of my magic potential was gone. So I retaliated by sending up a unit of 10 Mortek Guard who charged in, who managed to get a really long charge. I think it was like an 11-inch charge into some handgunners, killed the handgunners, managed to grab one of the gyrocopters so that it couldn't just fly and grab one of my objectives. However, the mistake I had made in turn 2 is that I had pushed up my my Mortek Guard off of one of my objectives after it had moved, and left it wide open for his Vanguard Paladors to try and grab. So he tried to grab it using the riding the Wind's Etheric, but unfortunately he failed to roll high enough, and I was very lucky that he wasn't able to just get that, because I would have gotten another extra point and put him ahead. So when it came to my turn, at the bottom of turn 3, I used those 10 Mortek Guard to keep going, and as you can see from the picture on the left, they are right up the board next to that mushroom terrain, and that's where one of his objectives were, and all he had over there was the Rune Lord. So I had 10 Mortek Guard, grabbed that objective, and again it gave me an extra point for holding more. By this point as well, my 2 units of 20 Mortek Guard have pushed up the board, heading towards the center, because we know that the objective is going to move there. And so I was just getting ready to jump onto the objective, because then he would have a really tough time getting rid of it. Also in turn 3, my catapult got really angry with his Hurricanum and decided to take it off in one shot. I rolled really hot on the hit and wounds, 2s and 3s, and unfortunately for Jared, he failed 3 of those, which caused 15 damage to the Hurricanum and just removed it. It then came to turn 4, and I believe I got priority here, which then allowed me to just chop through his Vanguard Paladors as well as push into his steam tanks, and I managed to kill 3 steam tanks in the turn, which kind of just sealed the deal then, because all he had left was 1 unit of Thunderers and I think 2 or 3 Gyrocopters left, and that just wasn't going to win him the game. So he shook my hand then. We had a talk about the game afterwards, and I laugh about it and how crazy that game was, and it was a lot of fun, and I would happily play him again. So round 3, I got paired up against my lovely fiance Nicole. This happens at every single 2-day tournament we ever go to. At some point, we end up facing each other, and as soon as she saw the pairings, her face just dropped, because she knew that this was a game that she was going to struggle to win. Nicole's been repping MSU Nighthaunt since she got into the game, and she loves Nighthaunt to bits, and she loves the way that it plays. I think she's got 16 minimal size units that she likes to just block up the opponent's army and just prevent them from moving where they want to go. So knowing what the catapult can do, Nicole took first turn and tried to hem me in as quickly as possible by dropping units down in front of me. I think it was just a couple of units of 10 Chain Rasp, but she also sent in her Bladegeist Revenant and the Spirit Torment to try and tie up my catapult, stop it from firing, because she knows that I can take out her characters pretty easily with the catapult. Unfortunately, she failed all her charges, so didn't really get anything in at all, and then I retaliated by charging and killing as much of her units as possible. Unfortunately, her army doesn't have much resilience, but she had also been quite clever by keeping most of her army in the underworld, so that I couldn't just kill it all, because she knew she'd need it for later on. So I used Arkan and my Liege Cavaliers to try and push up the right flank, but again, she like held them up, used like 4 banshees to just get in their way so that they just couldn't go over them. She's very good at positioning like that. And then I believe she gave me the second turn, or I won the turn. I managed to kill a bit more and try and grab one of her objectives, but she ended up with more models on her objectives so that I couldn't claim it. She decided to keep out of combat, keep hold of the objectives, but then she dropped down a lot of units on my side of the table. And all she needed to do was charge my units, hold there, and she would have won if she got the turn 3 priority. However, she failed the charges, even with the rerolls, and like she had me worried for a second there, and I honestly thought I could have lost it then. But I won priority. I gave it away to her, removed one of the objectives so that she wasn't, I think she wasn't holding any at that point. So she needed to get on all 3. But she failed to do so because I think she had actually managed to charge with 1 or 2 units in the previous turn, but needed to charge with everything in order to grab the objectives. And so I'd managed to kill what had charged, and then she just had very little left that could have won her the game. So when it came to my turn, I was able to just easily clear off the rest of the units that were holding the objectives, and then Arkan just flew over, grabbed the last objective, and that secured me the win. So round 4, I got to play another club member. I played Matt Daly and his Lumineth Realm Lords. We've played this matchup a few times, and I'm not sure he's beaten me yet, but it's always a fun game because we're both very defensive players, and I love facing his army because he's got threats that worry me, and I've got threats that really worry him. He was running, I believe, a Keflar, the Big Mountain Cow, the named hero, name slips my mind. He was running a big unit of Wardens, as well as a unit of 20 Sentinels. He had a unit of 10 Blade Guard and another unit of 5 Blade Guard, which are an absolute pain because he sticks them next to his Keflar and his Lore Seeker, and it's just so difficult to get rid of those models then. He was also running an Emerald Life Swarm and the Twin Stones. The Emerald Life Swarm in the past has done amazing things for him, so it didn't surprise me to see that in his list. So this was a super defensive game with neither of us really moving for the first 2 turns. He knew that my catapult had the special shot that allows it to take out characters, which I was planning on using on the Keflar, and he knew that because we played this game before. So I stuck the catapult next to some damn terrain, and I was trying to make it hurt itself to increase my chances of killing her. But unfortunately, I kept rolling really low on the D3 mortal wounds, and so it was just nigh on impossible to actually remove her when she was just passing wounds off. So we didn't move, we were just scoring the easy battle traits that require you to not do much, so like hold an objective with a monster, or just run 3 units where we would just nudge our units and just keep them where we were. But the real turning point came in turn 3 when I won the priority and I gave it away. This allowed me to remove one of his objectives, which immediately meant that I was holding more objectives than him and would put me on the front foot for scoring points. So as a result, this made him start thinking about moving forward. He immediately sent in the Spirit of the Mountain, and it just beelined for my catapult. He was fed up with my catapult and he wanted it gone. So he managed to get Speed of Hish out on it, which allowed it to move twice. It made the easy charge and then just punch my catapult in the face. He got it down to 1 wound, but then I kindly reminded him that he hadn't done his monster action, and as we're clubmates and as like I'm not too gamey a player, I let him do his stomp, and he managed to just kill the catapult, which was fine. It wasn't really going to do a lot when it was locked in combat with a big mountain cow. However, this did present me with an opportunity, as the mountain cow was now on my side of the board. It had taken a few wounds on the way in because I had used my Nightmare Predator to just keep chipping away wounds on it. And then I chose Bring It Down, and I just managed to do it with Arkan. So Arkan managed to get a good Curse of Years off, which I think I rolled 4 or 5 sixes. And considering the Mountain Cow had already taken about 7 wounds already, it was starting to look bleak for it. And then Arkan just charged in and absolutely whiffed with his sword, absolutely whiffed with his staff, and then his BC just stomped on forward with its Ren2 claws and just tore the poor cow down, which put me at a huge points advantage because I had more objectives than him, so that was 3 points. I'd got my battle tactic, which is 5. I had done it with a monster, which was 6, and I'd also killed a monster in the battle round, so that got me 7 points in a turn. It was at this point it was starting to look a bit bleak for Matt, but he decided to keep pushing on forwards. And then all he needed was a 6-inch charge with his wardens to get into 20 Mortek Guard, clear them off at a point, and then he would have held more points than me. However, he failed the 6-inch charge twice, and that had left one of his objectives exposed, which then allowed Arkan to do his nasty little teleport trick and grab another objective in his back lines, which I then burnt and got more points. And so that was a major win to me. So in round 5, I came up against Tyler's Blades of Corn. And Blades of Corn are an absolute nightmare for me whenever I face them because I don't know what half of their stuff does. And they always surprise me because you always hear people talking about how they're a low tier army, but then they just wreck face. And honestly, this game was no different. So he was running Scarbrand. He had a Bloodthirster. I think it was the double piling Bloodthirster or the 6-inch piling Bloodthirster. 2 units of the God, they're all blood, aren't they? So yeah, he had some goats. He had some Centaurs. He had Scar Blood Wrath. He had the Banner guy. He had some Blood Reavers, and then yeah, the guys with the big chains. And he also, of course, had Bellacore. So I gave Tyler first turn, and looking back, this was a mistake. He managed to push up with his chaff and pretty much just left his monsters hiding in the back. Because he knew that he didn't really need to throw them away. He grabbed as many points as he could, got his points for the turn, and then when it was my turn, he immediately Bellacored the catapult. And that just stopped all my threat for getting rid of Scarbrand and the Bloodthirster. I then got the I think he won priority and gave it to me, which meant obviously that the catapult was going to do nothing again. And I pushed it with Mortek Guard, I pushed it with my Liege Cavaliers, trying to kill as many things as I can. And this again was probably a mistake because all I was doing was giving him blood type points. What I probably should have done is just grab the points because I had the bodies and just stayed there, because his Blood Reavers probably weren't going to do much to my Mortek Guard, neither were the goats or the Centaurs. But then I really didn't know what I was coming up against when I saw Scarbrand on the other side of the board. And then, yeah, Scarbrand came in and absolutely smashed face. He completely obliterated 20 Mortic Guard in one go, which really shocked me. But then he followed this up by declaring bring it down on Arkan, charging into Arkan, who was stood near my home objective, and he just smashed another 20 Mortic Guard that was stood next to Arkan. But unfortunately, this meant they didn't kill Arkan to bring it down, because I managed to roar him and stop him fighting twice. However, at this point, he had got enough blood type points so that when it came to my turn, he fought me in my hero phase, killed Arkan, cleared off the rest of the Mortek Guard, and although we were super close on points, and I did manage to start killing his monsters with Catacross, who really went to town this game, it all came down to my last turn, and I was 5 points behind at the bottom of turn 5. So I opted to try and go for an easy battle tactic, which was to have 2 of my units in his deployment zone. However, this meant that I had to leave one of the objectives that I was holding. And as soon as I left, Scar Bloodwrath decided to re-emerge, grab that objective, which prevented me from scoring 2 points. And so right at the end, it came down to Catacross having to kill Be'lakor in order to score me the win, because I would have got my 2 points for completing my blood type point, my battle tactic, sorry. I would have killed Be'lakor for an extra point, and I would have also secured the point that Be'lakor was holding. So it would have got me, probably would have got me to a draw, but it also meant that he wouldn't have scored his grand strategy and I would have scored mine. And again, that would have won me the game. Unfortunately, one last roll of the dice and Catacross whiffed on the wound roll, failed to kill Be'lakor, who had 2 wounds left or something like that. And that was it. That was game over. It was a super fantastic game. It was really tense the entire way through. We had such fun that game, and I would happily play Tyler again. That was phenomenal game. He played really well, and honestly, I blame my lack of knowledge on Blades of Khorne for my own defeat. So my overall thoughts on the list. I think the list performed really well in all. I have no qualms with how it performed at all. Any mistakes that were made in the game or any downfalls were all due to my decision making. Obviously, drinking round 1 wasn't the best decision I made, but I still think ending 3-2 was really good, and I believe I came around 15th, which with OBR is really good, and with the FAQ, they're only now going to get better. Catacross, I still think is amazing for his points. The fact that he went down in points in AOS 3 is incredible. The most underestimated thing about him, or the most underrated thing about him, sorry, is that he can steal command points in every hero phase. And this affected every single game and caused all sorts of headaches for my opponents, because then they didn't have as many command points as they wanted to do everything that they wanted. And this gave me a really big advantage, because I was always sitting on 14 relentless discipline points. Unfortunately, the catapult did underperform this entire tournament, and I'm struggling to keep them in the list. I would like to try 2 as one last hurrah, just to see if I can make them work. I think where the value of the catapult comes is that opponents that have faced it before, they realize the damage that they can do. And so this caused quite a few of my opponents to really focus on the catapult because they were worried about it, what it was going to do and what it could kill. And so that really allowed the rest of my army to just advance up the board unscathed because my opponents constantly targeting the catapult, and that was fine with me. Arkan was the MVP of this tournament. I just think he's fantastic for the points. Yeah, he can no longer do multiple Mystic Shields, but I don't think he needs to do that. I think the Protection of Nagash trick is very nice on him. I also think multiple Arcane Bolts is still very good. It helped kill the Mountain Cow against Matt. It helped against the Hex Wraiths. Just his ability to just move so quickly, score battle tactics as a monster, I just think he should be included in more lists. But in conclusion, I had a really good time at this tournament. I always love going to these events because I'm quite well known in the scene now, and I know most of the people in the scene, and we always have a laugh, and it's always a good time. And if you are in the Gold Coast, Brisbane area or around Toowoomba, I advise that you go to any events that are hosted around there because it's always a good time. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. Please give me a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.